How's it going, everyone? I am back with another video. It's been a while since I've recorded a video, so apologies for that. I've just been very, very busy with life lately, so apologies for that. But I'm back with another video here. I even filmed an NFL video in, oh boy, Jesus, when was the last time I filmed an NFL video? I want to say it was like when Dylan and I talked about free agency, maybe something like that. Think it might have been that video. Not 100% sure on that, but it's been a while basically. Um, but yeah, I'm the NBA season just ended. Thunder won the championship, so Dylan and I a bit later are gonna try to make a episode of the podcast to talk about that, the rest of the playoffs, the NBA playoffs. Then probably gonna be shifting gears back into the NFL because it's June 29th. I'm recording this, so we're getting close to training camp preseason, and hopefully before you know it, the regular season will be here at the beginning of September. So I'm kind of starting to shift back into NFL gear. Plus, much as I'm a diehard NBA guy, I like the NFL more. And so they're a bit more fun for me to make videos on, I think, and just talk about. So today, what I'm going to be doing for the video is I'm going to be going over all the NFL teams, their win total at Vegas set, the win total line, and talk about if I think the over or under is going to hit. So basically, I think how I'm going to do it. I have this ESPN article pulled up. It has all the teams, the Vegas win line that they set, and then a couple bullet points just talking about like prior seasons, things like that, if they've hit the over under, all that good stuff. Then in another tab here, I have the team schedule pulled up, and then this drop down tab here, you can just switch between all the teams. So a couple notes as I guess to preface this. Obviously, a big part of the over under hit depends on the team's schedule. They get a cakewalk of a schedule. They play a lot of bad teams. The over is probably going to be favored, especially they're a good team. They get a gauntlet of a schedule. Maybe you want to consider the under, things like that. In general, if you're not 100% sure what I'm talking about when I say Vegas win line, basically what Vegas does is it picks every team and it gives them a number that they think the team will roughly finish with that many wins. So, for example, the Ravens here, the first team on this list, Vegas has them at 11.5. Now, obviously, you can't win half a game, so basically just round up to 12. So Vegas is basically saying, okay, we think the Ravens are going to win around 11.5 games, somewhere in that ballpark. Do you think they're going to win more, which is the over, or less, which is the under? So if you think they're going to win more than 11.5 games, so 12, well, 12 or more games, because 12 or more games, you'll bet the over. If you think they're going to win less than 11 games, you'll bet the under. Or 11 or less games, you'll bet the under. So obviously the better teams like the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, all those teams are going to have higher win-loss projections than the shitty team. For example, where's a shitty team here? Perfect. The Jags. So for the Jaguars, no offense to them, but obviously they're not as good of a team as the Ravens, so their win total's under compared to the Ravens. They're only at 6.5. So, as you would expect, the better teams are going to have higher win-loss projections, basically. So, I'll just dive straight in here. So the Ravens. So as I just was talking about, Vegas has their team win total at 11.5. Then again, you get a couple bullet points here. I probably won't go over all of them. Maybe I'll just glance at them. If I think they're important, I'll talk about them. But so I'm gonna go over with the Ravens. The Ravens, I feel like as long as they're healthy, are like a guaranteed shoe-in for like 11, 12 games every year. And I think the Ravens this upcoming year are gonna be better than they were last year, especially because their Achilles heel at the start of the year was their defense. Their offense was humming throughout the entire year. But their defense at the start of the year was very shaky. And then they made some adjustments. I want to say week 12 is when they made the adjustments. And from that point on, they had the number one ranked defense. So you get a whole offseason per usual to adjust things, get ready for the season. Per usual, the Ravens had a pretty good draft, free agency, things like that. I think they're going to be better than they were last year, and they went 12-5 last year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure they went 12-5. But again, obviously, a big part of that depends on the schedule. It's the first thing by the way, I zoomed out just so I get all the games in kind of like one shot here instead of having to scroll up and down. But so the first thing I usually do is I look at the team schedule and I kind of just do a quick glance through. I'm like, okay, what is a game where I'm like, all right, for sure they should win that game. The Ravens really do not have too many. Like, for example, I guess the Browns, even though the Browns are a division opponent, you're going to at least assume the Ravens win one of those two games. They probably should sweep them and win both games. That would be like a shoo-in game, for example. If they played a team like, the Ravens might not be the best example because they have a pretty tough schedule here, at least on paper. But like, for example, if this was my team, the last year's Patriots, that would be a shoo-in game where it's like, okay, yep, no doubt they should win that game. Obviously, it's a bit different this year. I'm very optimistic about my team, as I'll talk about later. But I usually go down all the games they should win. I'm like, all right, there's 1, 2, things like that. So they're really going to win, 12 plus games of this schedule. It's going to be hard, but I think they'll be able to do it. I'm going to go with the over. I feel fairly confident with that. Again, the Steelers, they'll probably split with the Browns. They should sweep. They'll probably beat my team. That Green Bay game go either way. That Jets game, they should win. Now, of course, there's going to be games where I'm like, okay, they definitely should win, and they'll probably lose. Each team, has a game or two every year, maybe even 3, where they play a team that they really should beat, but they maybe not. They don't play their best game. They make a bunch of mistakes. They lose, things like that. I'm sure the Ravens will have some. But basically, a lot of these games will be close. I think the Ravens will be able to get that over, though, and hit 12 plus wins. The Bills, 11.5. See, the Bills are a tough one because even like last year when they won 13 games, they probably would have won 14 if they had played their starters week 18 against my team. But they won 13 games. Not necessarily, people weren't looking at last year as like a rebuild year going into the year for the Bills, but it kind of was like a year like, okay, they'll make the playoffs, maybe not be a juggernaut. They'll probably get past the wild card, then probably lose in the divisional round. They were kind of a regular season juggernaut last year. Surprised some people, I think. Kind of how dominant they were in the regular season. And, I think they're expected to be, once again, a Super Bowl contender this year. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl? No. But I think the Bills this upcoming year are going to have a year similar to the year they had last season. So again, it's 11.5. Take a look at their schedule here. And just at a quick glance, see, like, for example, when I was saying about the Ravens, the shoo-in game, that's no offense to the Saints, but they should demolish the Saints. That should be a shoo-in win for them. The Falcons, maybe not necessarily a shoo-in win for them, but they should win that game. Games like that. The Jets, you think they'll at minimum win one. The Panthers, they should win that. So, I think just looking at a quick glance, the Bills maybe have a more, maybe not favorable necessarily, but, a couple opponents where it's like, okay, they should win that game versus the Ravens. They don't have as many as those games. Do you think the Bills will win? You know what? I'll go with the over for the Bills. I think they'll probably win around 12 games. Have a similar year to last year. Probably a lot of close games. They'll probably end up winning majority of the close games. I think I'll go with the over for the Bills there. The Chiefs. Interesting. Chiefs are 11.5. I actually so you can bet over under. So obviously there's the odds. I think the under for the Chiefs is the favorite betting line, at least on, I want to say DraftKings, but I'm not 100% sure. One website I saw that the under is the favorite for them. Now, that's interesting. Let me find the Chiefs here. Oh, there they are. My mouse is right over them. The Chiefs kind of have a gauntlet of a schedule. I mean, just the start of the year, they play the Chargers. That's in shit. What the hell are they playing? Why do I want to say Ber? Ah, God, is it Berlin? They're playing some internet. I forget exactly what they're playing. Some international game. Now, of course, it's the Chiefs, so it's technically an away game for both teams. What a surprise! They're the away team. What a coincidence. Sure, the NFL is doing anything they can to make the Chiefs good again. And so the Chargers, I'm going to talk about it when I get to the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going to be a really good team this year. So that's, week one, that's a tough matchup. And then week two, they immediately play the Eagles. Or actually, the Chiefs. Actually, just kidding. I take back what I said. The Chiefs are technically the home team. I'm honestly, maybe the NFL is like, hey, look, we're not favoring the Chiefs. See, it's an away team for both teams, or I mean, an away game for both teams. But hey, the Chiefs are the home team. So maybe the Chiefs are getting a bit shafted there. But you know what? They deserve it for all the bullshit they get. Then anyway, they play the Chargers and the Eagles week two. So that's going to be a 2 week stretch. That's a tough 2 week stretch. And then the Giants, they should win that game. Except who knows? The Giants early on, prime time, anything can happen. Who the hell knows? It'll be at New York. That could be interesting. The Ravens, that's a gauntlet. Jags they should win that game probably. Then the Lions, except who knows? The Jags, they could be a bit of a tough team early on. William Cohen, there's coaching scheme there. The Raiders played them tough, even though they're not great. Plus Pete Carroll, I think the Raiders will be decent this year. My Washington, Buffalo, they got a Denver, Indy, I think will be decent. They got a gauntlet of a schedule, is my point. But what was the problem not the problem, but what was the story with the Chiefs? They were winning, but it was not pretty. Like every game was close, maybe low scoring, grinded out, football type of game. They were winning, but it wasn't, like a typical 15-win team. They probably would have won 16 if they played their starters against Denver, but who knows? The last week of the year. Actually, honestly, maybe not. Fuck it. I think Denver would have beaten them with the Chiefs starters in, but who knows? They were playing for a playoff spot, and they really should have beaten them the first time, but block field goal there. But anyway, that's a hypothetical. But the Chiefs, they won 15 regular season games, and a team that goes 15-2, you're thinking, they're gonna, must be the Super Bowl favorite. And I guess the Chiefs sort of were just because they're the Chiefs, but it's like, 15 wins, you would think blowouts, high scoring offense, defenses balling out. The Chiefs offense was mid last year. As a matter of fact, I think it ranked 16th. So literally just overall ranking, that's the definition of mid, right in the middle, average, 16 out of 32. Their defense was really good. It was top 10. I want to say 8th. No, I think it was 9th, either 8th or 9th ranked defense, I want to say. Which was really good, but compared to the prior season, I think their defense was 3rd overall. So a bit of a drop off, but still really good. Their defense carried them the past 2 years. And their offense has been very mid. But the Chiefs last year, their defense kept games close. So their offense, even though it was struggling, maybe not necessarily struggling, but kind of just having to play a different type of brand of football. Their defense kept them in games where the whole time the Chiefs could just do whatever they want offensively. They could methodically go up the field. They could mix in the run, short passing, things like that. They never had to go like pass heavy. They're down, 1 million points late in the game, things like that, because the Chiefs defense kept them in games. The Super Bowl, we saw they're down multiple scores, and the Chiefs had to go pass, and look what happened. It was one of the worst offensive showings in NFL history until garbage time, where Mahomes got to pad his stats and make it look like he didn't play one of the worst games a quarterback has played in NFL history, which is twice now in the Super Bowl. Which I actually think he played better in the Tampa beatdown than he did in this game, but the stats suggest otherwise because of the garbage time stat padding. But that's okay. I hate the Chiefs. Cannot fucking stand Mahomes. I've said it numerous times, but if it's the first time you hear it, I hate the Chiefs and Mahomes. Anyway, but yeah, my point is the Chiefs. I don't want to say they were like the 2023 Vikings, who got eliminated in the wild card round, but the 2023 Vikings, it was like, the 2022 Vikings, it was like they went 13-4. They're winning all these games at the last second. Like ridiculous come from behind wins. They're getting all these plays to go in their favor, not necessarily luck, but they're getting all these plays to go in their favor. People are saying they're going to run out of luck at some point, and they lost in the wild card round. Now, the Chiefs, I don't think were. I think they were better than the 2023 Vikings. Or sorry, 2022 Vikings. I don't know why I keep saying 23 Vikings. The 2022 Vikings, but it was kind of the same thing. The Chiefs last year, I think, had the single luckiest season in the history of sports. The amount of bullshit they got, every 50-50 play goes in their favor. They get bullshit calls from the refs. I just had never seen a team get that much luck in one season. It was absolutely insane. And then what happened with the Vikings the following year in 2023? They started off 0-3. They had, that week 2 Thursday night game, Philly, they just got all played. But week 1, they had a couple unlucky things happening against the Bucs. They narrowly lost. Week 2, they got beat down in Philly on Thursday night. They're about to take the lead. Justin Jefferson gets the ball punched out right at the goal line, touchback. Week 3, they're about to beat the Chargers, and a tip pass in the end zone, and the Chargers pick it off. They go on to lose the game, the Vikings. Then the Vikings got a bit hot, and then what happens? Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles. And then even down the stretch, the Vikings are fighting for the playoffs. They have a lot of unlucky things happen to them in close games, and they finish 7-10. So again, kind of similar, right? At least from a blueprint perspective. Narrowly winning a lot of games, and getting some lucky things to happen, and then the next season, some unlucky things happen against you. Now, and again, the Chiefs, I think they're better than the Vikings team. So, I don't think they'll have the same thing happen necessarily. But as far as, how do I phrase here? I don't think the extent that it happened to the Vikings will happen to the Chiefs. Like, I think the Chiefs, I'll probably predict the over at 11.5. I think 12-5. So that sounds about right. I think they'll just hit the over. But I would not be surprised if they hit the under. So I think the Chiefs are going to regress a bit this year. Now, when I say regress, I don't think they're going to only win 7 games and miss the playoffs. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be in the AFC Championship game, for example. I just think the Chiefs, as I was just talking about the Vikings, they had a ridiculous amount of luck. I think it's going to regress at this next season, especially with the gauntlet of a schedule they have. They're bound to start losing some of these close games. They won an NFL record, one-score games last season, so it's bound to rear its ugly head for the Chiefs. And I really hope it does, because I fucking hate this team so much. But yeah, they just have a gauntlet of schedule. I would go over with the Chiefs, but I think it'll be barely. I think 12. Just looking at this, 12 seems like a good number. Probably some close wins, close losses. Certainly don't think they'll win 15 games like they did this past season. The Eagles. They're at 11.5. I'm going to go with the over. Where the hell are the Eagles? It must be yep, there they are. Okay, so the Eagles, they lost a lot of people in free agency, so that was kind of concerning. I think they'll be fine though. I don't necessarily know the Eagles are going to be in the Super Bowl again this year. And I think they'll be able to win 12 games. They get some couple games that they should win. Just looking at the schedule here. Well, they played the Giants twice in 3 weeks. That could be prime opportunity for the Giants to steal one of those games. But the Eagles lost a lot of people, which is kind of concerning. But I think they'll be fine. I think they'll win 12 games. Yeah, I mean, just looking at this, maybe not the most difficult schedule. So yeah, I think they'll win 12 games. Offensively, I think they'll be similar to how they were, even though they lost Kellen Moore, obviously. Defensively, I think they necessarily won't be, the top defense like they were this past season, but I think they'll still be a pretty solid defense. Vic Fangio coming back. So I think the Eagles, they'll win more than 11.5 games, so 12. Bengals. Here's an interesting one. So the Bengals only won 9 games. They went 9-8, and their win total's at 10.5. Now they're basically returning the same offense from last season. Defensively, we don't know what the hell's going to happen to Henderson. Obviously, defense was their big issue last year. The defense was fucking terrible most of the season. Their offense is historically good, and then their defense couldn't stop a parked car for the life of them last season for the most part, outside of a couple of games. What the hell, the Bengals? Whether they are. Okay, so the Bengals, their win total's at 10.5. So again, at a quick glance here, I mean, and I think their offense is probably going to have a similar output to how it was last year. Sorry, so let me look up one thing with the Bengals here. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think their offense is going to be just as good as it was last year, and I can't imagine their defense is going to be much worse. I actually didn't mind Louis Anarumo. I thought he was a solid DC. And as bad as their defense was, I think it got better as the year kind of, at the end there. But they hired Al Golden. I think that'll be a good pickup defensively. I don't think the Bengals are going to have a top 10 defense, anything like that, like a league shattering defense. But I do think it'll be a respectable defense. And again, even though the Bengals at 9-8, at a quick glance, like, okay, they're pretty mid, just based off their record. They had so many games with as god awful as the defense was that they should have won. They should have swept the Ravens or at least won one of the two. So there's 10, we'll say 10 wins. They should have beaten the Chiefs. Their defense wasn't really at fault for that game, but they should have beaten the Chiefs. There's another one. They should have beaten my team week 1. Their defense only allowed 16 points that game, but so it wasn't really on them. But they should have won that game. So that's 12 wins they should have. There's a couple other ones. The Commanders game, they probably should have won that one. What's another one? That Chargers game, they really should have won that game. They were down 21. They made a comeback. Then they had a bunch of bad, 2 missed kicks. Yeah, that killed them. That Pittsburgh game, they probably should have won. I mean, they went 9-8, but most of their losses, they really should have won. I think the defense will at least make up to where they'll be able to get a couple more wins. So what is it, 10.5? Yeah, 10.5. So let's see. Let's go through their schedule quick. Do I see 11 wins? They should start 2-0, and that's imperative for the Bengals to start off, with a good record. What's been their Achilles heel? They start off slow, so they should really beat the Browns and Jags first 2 weeks of the year. Vikings team, that could either way. Denver game, that could either way. So 2, 3, 4. You know what? I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over with the Bengals. I think they'll hit the over. I think they'll make the playoffs, have a get back on track type of year. The Lions. See, now the Lions went 15-2. Their win total is only at 10.5. What the hell are the Lions? Lions. There they are. As I scroll past them 10 times. Okay, now I think the Lions are going to have a bit of a regression this year. Now, again, like the Chiefs, do I think the Lions going to, have a losing record and miss the playoffs? No. I think around 10.5 suits them right. I think they'll probably win around 11-ish games, something like that. And they'll probably make the playoffs, but I don't think they're necessarily going to contend for a Super Bowl this year. They lost Aaron Glenn. I know that, Lions fans are kind of up and down on him. Ben Johnson's obviously a big loss. So I do think their offense will take a bit of a step back, but I don't think, it's going to be to the point where it's Jesus, what the hell has happened to this offense? I think their offense will be fine. They'll still put up some good numbers. Defensively, I think it'll be now. It sucks because the Lions, I honestly think, would have won the Super Bowl last year if they didn't have as many defensive injuries as they had. Their defense was really solid last year until all the injuries happened. Defensively, I think they'll probably have a solid season. Now, if I remember right, a bit shaky here, but I believe the Lions just promoted from within, from their DC and OC positions. Yeah, I think they just promoted from within. So I think they'll have a similar, production point for their defense and offense, just a bit of a drop off maybe from last year. And they have a brutal schedule too. I mean, just the start of the year, they play the Packers, the Bears, the Bears are, going to be a lot better than they were last year, especially early on. Then the Ravens and the Browns, they should win that. Then the at Bengals, at KC, against him. I mean, that at Minnesota, they get an absolute gauntlet of a schedule at the first half of the year, and then the back half of the year, it doesn't get much easier. So they have an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. That is a tough, brutal draw for the Lions schedule wise. Jesus Christ! Now that I'm looking at it, oh my God, that is a brutal schedule. I mean, talking about I was saying with the Ravens, I don't think they have many shoe-in games. All right, so let's see. The Giants, they should win that game. Uh, okay, then the Browns. Those two right there are really the only games like definitively. Yep, they really should win those games. At a quick glance here, and at least now, unless something, they probably should win the Dallas game, but that's not a shoe-in or anything like that. Um, yeah, they get a brutal schedule. Boy, I honestly might go under here. Do I think they'll? Oh boy, do I think they'll win 11 plus games? Oh boy. I'm gonna say over. I think around 11 is where I'll go, but I would not at all be surprised if the under hits. I could definitely see like 10 wins. I think nine's a bit too far, but I'll go over. I'll say 11-ish wins to the Lions. That is a brutal schedule. Okay, the Charger. Now, okay, this is a bit interesting. The ESPN has them at 10.5. I think most other websites have them at 9.5. Um, that's interesting. Okay, let's look at the Chargers schedule. Oh, there they are. Okay. Okay. So, I gotta double check this. I could have sworn the Chargers win total was at 9.5. Let me see here. Yeah, okay, so they're at 9.5. So what the hell is ESPN with them at 10.5 for? That's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go with 9.5, even though ESPN has them listed at 10.5. And 9.5, I am fairly confident with the over here. As a matter of fact, I am gonna honestly, I don't really like to bet on over unders too much, but I'm gonna bet the over for the Chargers. I think from my sports betting accounts because I don't usually don't like to bet too much unless I usually bet very conservatively. I'm a big parlay guy. I usually will group up very conservative spreads and money lines, so I don't win too much, but I like to be very cautious with my money, so I don't like to gamble too much either. But I think I'll be betting on the Chargers here. And now the Chargers, they won 11-6 last season, and they got like significantly better this offseason. They had a nice free agency, they had a nice draft, they had a nice year, a year two of Jim Harbaugh. Feels like he improves every year as a head coach. I think the Chargers are going to be a really good team. Now, do I think the Chargers are going to contend for a Super Bowl? Probably not, but I think the Chargers are going to be a really solid team next year. And again, just look at their schedule. So the Chiefs, I honestly might predict them to beat the Chiefs week one. The Raiders, they should win that. Denver, they probably should win that. The Giants, they should win that. Washington, I think they should win that. That's a tough one. Miami, they should win that. Colts, they should win that. I mean, some of these games can go either way. I think I would lean Chargers. The Jags, again, the Raiders. They don't have the most. They have a couple tough teams. They have a fairly favorable schedule. I am absolutely going with the over now, barring injury. Even if 10.5, I would probably feel confident with the over. But yeah, I'm pretty confident with the Chargers. I think they're going to be a really solid football team next year. And I'm pretty confident that the over is going to hit, even though ESPN has them at 10. Maybe this is an older one. At 10.5. I'm going with 9.5 because that's what most sports books have them at. So I am going to go with the over for the Chargers. And barring, like injuries or anything like that, I would be honestly surprised if it doesn't hit. The Rams, they're at 10.5 too. Let me make sure that's right compared to the Um, sorry, let me make sure here. Yeah, okay, so they're at 9.5 too, but again, ESPN has them at 10.5. What the hell? I'm either way, I'm going over with the Rams. I think the Rams are going to be another really good football team this upcoming season. We saw last season they went 11-6, if I remember right. And they kind of had a tough start to the year. They started out 0-2. Um, they had a bunch of injuries. They were, I believe, 1-4 at one point in the season. That they rebounded. They played better as the year went on. They demolished the Vikings in the wild card round. And they really, I think, should have beaten the Eagles in the division round. And they made so many mistakes that game. And so did the Eagles. Not the Chargers. The Rams made so many mistakes that game, and they still nearly had it at the end there. And I would have picked them to beat the Commanders. And then with how awful the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, that was in large part because it was the Eagles, but I think the Rams would have had a really good shot at winning the friggin' Super Bowl for Christ's sake, um, which would have been insane because no one would have picked them to do that, going into the last season. But especially when they were at 1-4, I think they were at one point. Um, let me. I think they were 1-4. Let me. Yeah, they were 1-4 at one point. And then they started to. They went 10-7, so not 11-6. They probably would have won 11-6 if they played their starters against Seattle, even though Jimmy G played pretty good. Um, so yeah, let me look up something with the Rams here. Um, one second here. Oh my God, Jesus Christ, I can't type. Um, okay, there we go. Anyway, yeah, the Rams offense I think will be really productive next year. They obviously got Davante Adams. That's a big signing. I think they'll be really good next year. The Rams defense, I'm getting more and more. What's the I know what the phrase is, but I'm like kind of getting higher more and more on the Rams defense. Pause. But it was really solid last year. I think Chris Shula did a really good job getting production from the pass rush for the most part. They were just a really solid defense. I thought they were going to significantly struggle without Aaron Donald up front, but they were pretty good. Jared Verse, obviously, big reason why. But I think Chris Shula did a really good job. And again, year two, I think they'll be probably even better. I think they have a better roster. And again, they get a fairly favorable schedule. So 9.5, 10.5, whatever it is, I'm picking the over. They get a lot of games they really should win here. That Jags game, you think they'll at least at minimum split with Seattle. That Atlanta game they should win. Cardinals, you think at minimum they split with. Niners, they'll probably split with that Saints. It's a free win. No offense to the Saints, or at least it should be a free win. Titans should be a win. Houston, they probably should win. Indy, they should win. They get a lot of games where I think they're going to win. Regardless, if it's 9.5, 10.5, I'm going over with the Rams. Okay, now another 10.5. I don't know if this one's right either. Um, Let me look here. Okay, that's right, 10.5. Now, this might be surprising at first because the Niners only won 6 games last year, and they lost a lot of free agents this offseason. So it's like, what the hell are they doing at 10.5 wins? Let's look at their schedule here. There they are. Getting Robert Saleh back is going to be huge. That defense, I think, is going to be really good next year. And offensively, I think they'll still be pretty solid. Kyle Shanahan, even though obviously he gets a lot of criticism, I think he's a really good play caller. Obviously, he has his flaws, but I think he's a really good play caller. But just looking at their schedule next year, I think why are they at 10.5? Well, just take a look at the schedule. On the road in Seattle, that's a pretty tough game, division rival that it seems like they play each other tough every year, so that's a bit tough. They probably should win that game though. Then the Saints, they should win that. Cardinals, they should win that. Jags, they should win that. The Rams, they always play well. Just my point is they get a really favorable schedule. I mean, they play the Panthers, the Browns, Titans, Colts. They have a really favorable schedule. This is a tough one. Do I think they'll really win 11 games? Do I think also I think the 49ers are kind of getting swept on a bit. I don't think they're going to contend for a Super Bowl next season, but I think they'll probably make the playoffs, be like maybe an under the radar team. We're so used to the 49ers being, right up there in the NFC favorites. I don't think they'll be that next year. I think they'll probably make the playoffs. And who knows? Anything can happen in the playoffs. So the 10.5, so they need 11 wins. So I see 11 wins here. You know what? This might be a bit bold. I'm going to go over. I don't think I've gone under yet, but I think I'm going to go over. I tempted to say under because I could see like 10-7, but I'm going to say I think they'll get 11 wins with this schedule. I'm going to go over. Maybe a bit bold with the Niners there. Commanders also sitting at 10.5. I could have sworn they were at 9.5. ESPN must be different than most of the other ones. Let's see here. Let me just double check. Yeah, so they're at 9.5 in other sports books. Now, you might see that and say, well, they won 12 games last year, and they were expected to, be a not so great team last year, and they were 1 win away from the Super Bowl, making the Super Bowl. So why are they, getting downgraded at 10.5? Well, I think it's because even though, they got Debo and they got Tunsil, which the Texans and them made that trade. The defense was kind of shaky last year at best. It wasn't so great, I don't think. And I think it's kind of going to be the same thing this year, even though Dan Quinn, obviously a really good defensive mind, is the head coach there. Offensively, I think they'll be solid, but I think they might take a bit of a step back. And defensively, again, I think it'll be kind of similar to last year. But the Commanders, even though they won 12 games last year, so many of them were like right down to the wire, and it wasn't necessarily like, lucky plays like the Chiefs, of course, were getting things like that, but it was like right down to the wire, and they won a lot of them. It's like kind of the same thing with the Chiefs. How many close games are they going to be able to win in that fashion? They're going to have to lose some of them, right? I guess really the only lucky one was that Hail Mary against the Bears there. But they outplayed the Bears. They really should have won that game anyway. But yeah, you look at the schedule here, fairly favorable, I would say. They don't have to play the Eagles till, week 16. Maybe one of the teams, probably more so the Eagles, will be locked into a seed, and they'll rest their starters week 18. Maybe they could get, a favorable matchup there. But, if they get a fairly favorable schedule, the Raiders, I think, will be tough early on. And then, kind of get worse as the year goes on. But I think the Commanders get a pretty favorable schedule. So let me look here. Let's see. I think they'll win week 1. I think they'll probably lose week 2. I think they'll win week 3. Week 4, I think they'll lose week 5. So I'm at 3. 4, I'll give them that win. Yeah, I'll give them that win. I think they'll beat Dallas. 5. Probably lose the Chiefs. 6. Okay. See, this is a close one for me. Oh boy, I kind of feel good saying 10-11 wins. Okay, so 9.5, I'll go over. I don't think they'll go 9-8. That's kind of an easy one for me. 10.5 though. Okay, let me go through it again. All right, I think they'll win 1. And again, they could, just because I'm saying I don't think they'll win. These are just kind of games I feel fairly confident in. The other games I have to think more about. I think go either way. I think they'll win this game. This game. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, fuck it. I'll go over. I'll say 11. I'll say 11 because I think some of the games I think that I'm not too sure on. They'll probably win some of them. But I'll say 11. But again, that's kind of a shaky one for me. I'll go over either way. That's a tough one for me there. The Broncos sitting at 9.5. So that Broncos will be interesting because obviously no one expects them to the season they did last year. They overachieved, I think, everyone's expectations, probably even the most optimistic of Denver fans. And they got better. Year two of Sean Payton, Bo Nix. I think the offense will be better. Their defense, I think, will be. It was really good last season. I think it'll be really good this year. So honestly, just that in mind, I think I'll go over. I think they'll win 10 games at least. 9.5. Yeah, I think they'll win 10 games. And looking at their schedule here, um, yeah, I think they'll probably be able to win 10 games this schedule. Um, I mean, you even look at a juggernaut like the Chiefs, and it's like, well, they blew obviously week 18. The Chiefs didn't play anyone. They shut them out last year. They blew the doors off, and they really should have beaten them the first matchup too. Um, a team like the Chargers, you'll say, yeah, and then maybe they'll split that. The Colts, they should beat. The Titans, they should beat. Um, the Jets, they probably should be. I'll say 10 wins. I'll say they'll get 10 wins. I'll go over for the Broncos there. Packers at 9.5. Not even look at their schedule. I'm fairly confident with the over, but let's see their schedule though. Okay, that actually seems. I want to say 10. Let me look at the Packers here. Hang on. Um. Oh, it is 9.5. Right. Okay, yeah. So without even looking at their schedule, okay, now actually their schedule kind of looks a bit brutal, but I think the Packers will win more than 10 or more games. I'm gonna go over with the Packers, and again, I know I haven't gone under with any team yet. Oh, excuse me here. Need a sip of water. Um, but let me so yeah, they get obviously a tough schedule here. Um Yeah, I think they'll be able to win 10 games. I mean, the Pack, they won 11 games last season. They really should have won 12. They really should have beat the Bears week 18. But they only, besides with the exception of the Bears, they lost to the Vikings uh, twice and the Lions twice and the Eagles and then that Bears. So they really, so with the exception of the Bears, they really only lost to like the juggernaut teams in the NFC last season. And I think they got better this season, this offseason. Jordan Love hopefully will be healthy. That defense was really good last season. I think it'll be better this year. Or if not, on the same par as it was last season. I think the offense healthy will be good. I think they'll get more than 9.5 wins. I think they'll at least win 10 games. I'm fairly confident with the over for the Packers there. Texans sitting at 9.5. Houston, where the hell are we? There we are. Oh, my computer's buffering here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so 9.5 at first glance, you would think it has to hit, right? The Texans, with all that talent, have to win at least 10 games. I think now again they get a fairly favorable schedule. I would say they don't play too many juggernaut teams. I think around 10 wins, which again is what they got the prior two seasons, that'll happen. I think they'll at least win 10 games. So I'm going to go over, which again, I honestly, now that I'm seeing a lot, I don't know if there's a team I'm going to go under on. I don't know if there is a team I'm going to go under on. Jesus, now that I'm looking through it here. But yeah, I'm gonna go over. I think they'll at least win 10 games. I mean, okay, I think they'll probably lose week one, probably lose week two, honestly, too. Then they should win the next two. Probably lose to the Ravens. Probably should beat the Seahawks. If that could be a tough matchup. Uh, this is. I mean, they should beat the Jags, Titans. So what's that? Four, uh, five. Yeah. Uh, I'm gonna say 10-7. I feel without not just at a quick glance around 10-7. I think they'll just hit the over. I wouldn't be shocked if they hit the under, but I think they'll at least win 10 games. I don't think they'll go 9-8 or less, bar an injury. The Bucks. I am honestly a bit surprised it's only at 9.5. Where's Tampa? There they are. Now, the Bucks last year went 11-6, and they had a bunch of injuries, especially at receiver. They probably should have even finished with a better record. And they had a very under the radar like solid offseason. They have a good draft. Jason Light's a really good general manager. They had a good draft. I think I think the Bucks are going to be a really solid team next year. Now, again, do I think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders? Probably not, but I think they'll almost certainly win the NFC South. Um, but yeah, do I think the Bucks will win at least 10 games of the schedule? I mean, I have to imagine so. Let's just go through it real quick. Um, let's just say Atlanta they split with. They should beat the Jets. They should beat the Seahawks. Should beat the Saints. Probably will beat my team. Should beat the Cardinals. Should beat the Saints again. Should at least into this. They probably should at least split with the Panthers. So how many wins is that? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, okay. That's like around 10 wins. And again, some of the games that could go either way, they'll probably win at least some of them. So again, not to beat a dead horse here, but I'm gonna go over with the Bucks here. Um, yeah, except barring injury, they lose some games because Todd Bowles makes some bad decisions. I think he's a great defensive coordinator, not a great head coach. Um, but yeah, the Bucks I think are a really solid team. Even though they lost William Cohen, it'll be Baker's third offensive coordinator in a year. 3 years. Sorry, new offensive coordinator every season. Maybe it'll catch up to them at some point, but I think their offense will be fine. Um, yeah, I think the Bucks have a really solid schedule. I think they'll win 10 games at least. Uh, Cardinals. Um, let's see, 8.5. Hmm. Okay, well they really should start the season at least 1-1. Um, hmm. Do I think they'll win 9 games here? Honestly, let's see. All right, let's just give them that one against the Saints. And that one against Seattle. So that's 3 right there against the Titans. Um, honestly, this might be my first under. I could absolutely see the over. I could maybe see as high as like 10 wins. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch. 9-ish wins for the Cardinals here, but I I don't know. I'm kind of think around 8-ish. Okay, let's go through. So 1 against Saints. 2, we'll say 3. Um, we'll say this split then. There's 4, 5, 6. Maybe they split the Rams. 7. Honestly, yeah, I'm gonna go with the first under here. I think for the Cardinals, I think they'll have a similar year to how they did last year. And again, even though I'm going under here, my first under prediction, I wouldn't be shocked if the over hit. Um, but if it does, I think 9-10 that range. Not by too much. But I'm going to go under here at the Cardinals. I think around 8 wins will suit them. Bears. Here's an interesting one. Chicago. There you are. Sip of water here. So the Bears are at 8.5. So meaning if the over hits, they'll need to win 9 or more games. Do I see that happening? I think the Bears are going to be a really solid team. That defense, obviously after they fired Eberflus, it was a bit of a disaster some games. But defensively, they brought oh God, who the hell did they hire as defensive coordinator? It's gonna lose Dennis Allen, right? Dennis Allen, right? I think so. Let me just double check. Yeah, DC for okay. So yeah, they got Dennis Allen. I think he's a really solid defensive coordinator. I think the Bears will have a solid defense next season. Then offensively, obviously, that's a big story. Caleb Williams, is he going to make the big jump? Even though sophomore slump is for a lot of rookie quarterbacks going into their second year. Is that going to happen? With Ben Johnson, I think it's perfect, at least on paper. Obviously, he was the home run hire for everyone was looking to hire him. Except my team, I'm very happy we got Vrabel instead of Ben Johnson, even though Ben Johnson would have been solid, I think, too. How's Ben Johnson going to do as head coach? Question there. But offensively, I think they got a lot of talent. I think they'll be really solid offensively. They buffed that lineup. That was a complete disaster. It was a mess for them last season, the offensive line. Do I think they'll win more than 9 or more games with this schedule? Let's see here. Let's say they split with the Vikings. All right, what's one? Why not? We'll say they beat Dallas too. I honestly think the Raiders might upset them there. 3, 4, 5. Oh, this is a tough one. 8.5 is a really good point. Jesus. Let's just let's say they start off 1-0. 1-0. 2, 3. All right, 3, 4, 5. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. Oh, I can see either or hitting. Okay, let's see. Let me just get in here. Let's say they beat the Lions. Let's say they beat the Vikings. 1, they split. 2, I think Dallas will probably beat them in Dallas. Raiders might upset them, but they probably should win that game on paper. They're at 2, or they're at 1. 2. This is a tough one. Honestly, I can see anywhere from like 8 to and maybe 7 as an absolute floor. 7 to like maybe even as high as 11, but I don't think they'll get to 11. I think 7 to 10 is a pretty realistic win range. The Bears, oh boy. I kind of want to say 8 just at a quick glance here. All right, so like the Browns, Saints, those are really the only shoo-in free wins they should have. Then again, we'll say they split with the Vikings and Lions, and we'll say they split with the Packers, so that's 5 wins. They very well could beat the Cowboys, but I'll say Dallas maybe holds on. They should beat the Raiders. I kind of get a feeling the Raiders will be sneaky early on, as I mentioned earlier. Washington, they might lose that. They probably should lose that game at Washington. Should lose both of these games. Steelers late in the season, gonna at least keep Mike Tomlin's 9-8 streak intact or 500 streak intact. That could go either way. We'll just give him that one just for argument's sake. We'll say 6 wins. Niners that could go either way. We'll say 7. Let's just give him that one. That's 7. Just very generically looking at the schedule. Even if we give him the Washington win, which I don't know, or the Dallas win, that's 8. I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna say around 8 wins, but I would not at all be surprised at the overhits. This might be the toughest one yet, though, for me. The Cowboys. So the Cowboys are an interesting one because on paper they did not have a very great offseason. They were not very great last year. Although I will say they kind of got hot as the season went on last year, specifically late, where they won 2 games in a row. And it's like, okay, they're going to make a playoff push after they beat the Giants on Thanksgiving. They should have beaten the Bengals, and they lost, and that's kind of what ended their playoff hopes. Their offense kind of picked it up as the year progressed, and Brian Schottenheimer is the head coach. On paper, I don't like that, but at least they keep some things the same with the offense. Brian Schottenheimer is the OC, even though it's Mike McCarthy really calling the plays. So at least they have some continuity there. Defensively, Matt Eberflus, people are going to look at that just as just mean the Cowboys, Schottenheimer and Eberflus running the offense and defense. Now, actually, I don't think Schottenheimer. No, I think I gotta look this up, but I think Schottenheimer said he was going to call the offense. I'm not 100% sure. Let me look this up real quick. Let's see. Oh boy, Jesus Christ, I cannot type. Okay. Well, Brian Schottenheimer called the Dallas defense. No results found. What the hell? Okay, yeah. Brian Schottenheimer will call plays for the offense plays the Cowboys. So him and Eberflus running the offense defense. That's at first glance might be a meme. Matt Eberflus obviously was not a great head coach. He is actually a really solid defensive coordinator. I think. I think the Dallas defense might surprise some people next season. I think it'll be solid. Now, the offense, obviously hoping Dak's back, knock on wood for him, healthy. I think it'll be decent, kind of how it's been the past couple seasons. 8.5 around there sounds right for the Cowboys. But just looking at the schedule, that's a big part of it. I mean, obviously Philly week 1, that's a tough draw. Although week 1, anything can happen. Who the hell knows? They should beat the Giants. I mentioned when I said the Bears. I think they'll probably beat the Bears. The Jets they should beat. The Panthers they should beat. Washington they really should have swept them last season. I think they'll at least split. Cardinals they should beat. Raiders they should beat. Then a bunch of the games go 50-50. They'll probably win some of them. So at first glance, I think the over is going to hit for the Cowboys, but I wouldn't be shocked if they only win 8 games. I think they'll overhit. I think the Cowboys. Yeah, I think Dallas will be around a 10-ish win team this upcoming season. I'll go with the over for the Cowboys. Dolphins sitting at 8.5. There they are, the Dolphins. My computer takes its time to load here. There we go. Okay, now the Dolphins have kind of had a turbulent offseason a bit. Now, on paper, it feels like they've gotten worse. As I'm recording this on June 29th, they've still yet to trade Jalen Ramsey. Tyreek Hill's maybe talking about, he's trying to convince him to stay. Who the hell knows what's going to happen there? Defensively, the Dolphins are actually solid. I want to say they had but this is actually shocking to say a lot. I think they had a top 5 defense last season in terms of overall rankings, which is a bit surprising. Anthony Weaver did a really solid job there. So I think their defense might be a bit under the radar. Their offense, I think, assuming Tua is healthy, will be kind of similar to how it has been the past couple of seasons. But it just feels like the vibe, something's off there. Obviously, Tyreek Hill saying, I'm not requesting trade. Then, I need to get out of there. Oh, I'm not requesting trade. And then, he's saying going to beat Mike McDaniel's ass on the sideline for not getting me the ball. Things just seem a bit turbulent. It seems like the Dolphins are declining a bit, but I still think they'll probably, be a high-flying offense at least through parts of the year. I think their defense will be solid. They only won 8 games last season, but they had a bunch of injuries. I think the Dolphins, assuming they stay healthy, what is it, 8.5? Yeah, 8.5. I think that over probably will hit just a bit, maybe in the 9, 10 wins, maybe 11 at most, that range. Wouldn't be shocked if the under hit. But looking at their schedule here, I'll probably split with us. Should beat the Colts week 1. Except who knows, actually. The Colts might be a bit sneaky this year. Should beat the Jets, should beat the Panthers, should beat the Falcons, certainly should beat the Browns. The Bills, they play tough. Maybe I'll just say they split with the Bills. Should beat the Jets again. Yeah, I think the over will hit, but I think the Dolphins are definitely a team in decline. But I do think they'll be able to get more than 9 or more wins this season. Vikings, this is another interesting one because they won 14 regular season games this past season. So at first glance, it's like, why are they only at 8.5? Especially because they got significantly better. They had a really solid offseason. I think the big question is J.J. McCarthy. Now, Sam Darnold, I don't think is a great quarterback. Obviously, he had a great year with them last year, career year. Got paid to go play for Seattle, obviously, all that money. Now, do I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be able to have a season similar to Darnold? I don't know much about college football. I'm not a big college guy, but apparently the Vikings were really high on J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, there's a reason they took him in the first round, their first pick 2 years ago. But I think J.J. McCarthy will be solid in the Viking system. There's going to be a system where you succeed. It's going to be Kevin O'Connell's. That defense, I think, is going to be really good under Brian Flores. And again, the offense, I think, will be good. Maybe I will say, though, that I think they're going to try to run the football a bit more than they did last season consistently. So that'll be good for them. Especially help J.J. McCarthy, which is basically his rookie year, even though it's his second year technically. He looked good in the preseason last season. Obviously, there's not much. You don't want to base too much off that. But, yeah, 8.5. I think, honestly, I'm surprised it's that low. I think they'll at least win 9 games. And again, just looking at the schedule here, I mean, should beat the Falcons. We'll say they split against the Bears. Probably, we'll say the Steelers pull off that one. Should beat the Browns. So they had 1, 2, 3. Or we'll say they beat the Bears at home. We'll say they drop week 1. I don't know. I know I said that the opposite. This isn't like my official predictions. I'm just first glancing it. So let's see. 1, 2. We'll say they split the Lions. I feel fairly confident they'll at least get 9 wins. I think they'll be a really solid team next year. If JJ, I don't think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders, but if they had a veteran, maybe not even necessarily a veteran, but a really good starting solid quarterback, and again, we just don't know what we're going to get from JJ McCarthy. I don't mean to just disrespect him. He might as well be. Who knows? Or very well could be. Who the hell knows? But if the Vikings had a really solid quarterback, if they had a Burrow or Allen or Lamar, someone like that, I think they honestly would be right up there for Super Bowl favorites. Maybe not even like a tier 2 quarterback. Like a I don't know who the hell's a tier. Like a Herbert. He's obviously a debated one. If they had a Herbert, I think they'd be up there too. Even if they got Aaron Rodgers, who people can say what they want. I think he would excel in that system. I think they'd be up there for Super Bowl contenders. I just think the Vikings have got a really good roster on paper. So I'll go with the over there. Steelers. Steelers, where are we? There we are. 8.5, that sounds about right. Obviously they just got Roger. I think the Steelers will at least be a 9-win team. Keep Mike Tomlin's 500 plus streak alive. Uh, I think they'll at least be a 9-win team. That defense really solid, probably. The offense, I think it'll be a bit better than it was last year. I probably similar to how it was last year. Rodgers and Arthur Smith are an interesting combo. I think is Arthur Smith is obviously a run heavy guy, um, which in Rodgers, I think, I don't know, it just seems like an interesting fit. Rodgers kind of likes to, sling it down the field. Arthur Smith really isn't that type of coach. He's more of a ground and pound type of guy. But Aaron Rodgers is a really big play action guy. He loves the play action, which also you get the run game established. You can get the play action game rolling there. So that could be good. But I just think it's a very interesting fit overall. But anyway, I think they'll probably win at least 9 games, like barely even glance at their schedule here. There's always, late in the year, they always turn it up to try to make a playoff push, it feels like. Last year they started out really strong to, the surprise of most people. I think they were 10-3 at one point, then it kind of collapsed as the year ended. I see the playoff games, the Ravens, they played terrible for the most part. That was an ugly performance. Yeah, I think they'll at least get 9 wins, though. It's the Steelers, solid defense, Mike Tomlin, Rodgers. The offense will be decent, I think. I think they'll at least get 9 wins there. The Seahawks at 8.5. That's a interesting one there. My phone here, one sec. Okay. So that's interesting. The Seahawks, they won 10 games last season. And they had Geno. They're going from Geno to Sam Darnold, which, the meme of like the guy holding like the brown button shirt, and it was like the Seahawks going. Well, he's like holding a shirt, and then he has the same shirt on. It's like the Seahawks going from, Geno to Darnold. I don't know why I just said like a brain freeze. Geno to Darnold. That meme. I think Sam Darnold will probably have a similar output. He'll probably turn the ball over more. I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be nearly as good as he was in Minnesota, especially because they have Clint Kubiak as the offense coordinator. He's a really interesting hire for the Seahawks, I think, because he likes to run the ball a lot, and he's just a run-heavy guy. And the problem with that is, let's just say you run the ball, you get it established, you chew a bunch of time off the clock, and Sam Darnold, I don't think he's going to be as good as he was in Minnesota. He'll probably look like closer to the Sam Darnold of old that we're used to. He'll probably have a bad turnover or something, and there goes that drive. Clint Kubiak is just, he likes to run a lot, and it's just an interesting hire. That's why I think, well, one of many reasons Metcalf wanted off the team, especially because with Kubiak, that hire, I don't think he wanted to be a blocker, for a heavy majority, maybe not a majority, but a heavy amount of snaps. So that's why they had to trade him to the Steelers. Well, not trade him to the Steelers, but trade him away. Trade him to the Steelers, though. And I think Clint Kubiak's a solid OC. I mean, the first 2 weeks of the season last year, we'll take the Saints to the greatest show on turf with their offense. And then after that, they fell off a cliff for the most part. But especially, I remember when he was the Vikings OC in like 2021, they had a really good offense. But the Seahawks, just weapons-wise, obviously, offensively at least, are a downgrade compared to the Vikings. I think the offensive coaching isn't as good. The system isn't as good. I don't think Darnold will be as good. That defense, though, with Mike Macdonald, I think will be really solid. I think that'll keep them in a lot of games. I think, the offense will have games here and there where they look really good. I don't think the offense will be, terrible. But I think, if I had to guess, it would probably rank somewhere in, I would probably say the lower 20s, somewhere around there, maybe the higher teens. I don't think the offense will be great. I just don't think Darnold is a great fit with the Seahawks. I'm not too high in the Clint Kubiak hires, OC. Obviously, they lost Metcalf, Lockett. Actually, Tyler Lockett, I don't think has been signed by anyone. Let me double check though. Um, oh, the Titans signed him. That's right, because I remember all the memes about all the washed receivers going to the Titans. Let me just double check something here. Actually, I completely forgot they got Cooper Kupp. Obviously, that's a pretty good signing for them. That's a bit of a shocker. No one expected him to go there. That came out of nowhere. The Seahawks weren't even in rumors for him. But they get JSN, who I think is solid, and then they get MVS as their number 3, who can make the deep play here and there. But MVS is your number 3. That's not ideal. Again, the defense I think will be solid. I think that'll be a really solid defense. I like Mike Macdonald. I like his coaching defensive philosophy, how he coaches the defense. And again, just looking at the opponents here, maybe not a complete gauntlet, but I mean, again, I feel bad picking on like the Saints, but the Saints I just think are going to be terrible. I think the Saints will probably, at least on paper, as of now, be the worst team in football next season. Okay, see, the Seahawks don't really have that difficult of a schedule on paper, is the thing. That's why the over is a bit appealing. Except, I mean, all right, let's just go. I think they'll probably beat the Saints 1. Just thinking to myself here. I feel fairly confident with the under. I wouldn't be shell-shocked if the over hits. I think at most it'll be like 9, 10 wins. But I'm going to go under with the Seahawks. I think they'll win 8 or less games. I feel fairly confident with that one. Okay, I'm going to... I'm going to skip my team. How many teams do we get left? Oh, we're almost there. I am going to skip my team for now, come back to them, because I'm going to talk about a lot with my team. So I'll skip them for now, come back in a bit. Falcons. There they are. Falcons are an interesting one. Going into last season, people expected them to probably win the division, and if not, be right there in the box, maybe seeing to a wild card spot. Otherwise, Nona, I don't think expected them to win the Super Bowl last year, contend for the Super Bowl, but we expected the Falcons to be a really solid team, getting Kirk, made some investments, upgraded the roster, and they were playing how we expected. A good portion of the year, they were, I believe, 6-3 at one point. They were looking like the team we expected them to, and then they just had that rough streak where Kirk just played really poor football. They went on a losing streak. Penix looked really good. They came up short of the division in the playoffs. They finished the season 8-9. So yeah, tough one for the Falcons there. So their win total is at 7.5. I would probably, I think most of win totals are like right on point. I would say that one's pretty good for the Falcons. Let's see here. So I think the Falcons will hit the over or the under. So not actually a pretty favorable schedule now that I'm looking at it. I think they'll split with the Bucs, probably split with the Panthers. They really should have beaten Washington in that primetime game last year. They'll probably lose that one though. So they're at 2. I think the under will hit for the Falcons. I want to say around 7. I wouldn't be shocked if the over hit. I mean, they don't even have to finish 500 for the over hit. They just have to win 8 games and the over will hit. I could see them maybe even winning around 9-ish games. But I think the under will hit. I'm going to say around 7 for the Falcons here. They'll probably have a couple. I mean, the Falcons, I don't think are a bad team. I think they'll have a couple games where against, a team they probably should lose against, they'll probably end up winning. Maybe a game like the Rams, or like they'll beat the Niners, upset them. Teams like that. Maybe even the Vikings, a game like that. I think overall, though, that The under probably will hit, but it wouldn't be too surprised at the over hits there. Panthers. This is an interesting one. They're at 6.5. There they are. Okay, so at first glance, without even looking at the schedule, I want to say the over is going to hit for the Panthers because we saw them last season. They got kind of hot as the year went on, the back half of the year there. After Bryce Young got back from being benched, he played really good, and then they got an off season. If I remember, I think they had a solid free agency in the draft. What did they? They only went 5-12 last season, but well, okay. Now that I say they kind of got hot, they lost a lot of close games. Even though they were playing much better, they lost a lot of close games. Some good teams, like the Dallas game, they got killed on that one. And the Eagles, they nearly won that game. The Bucks, they really should have won that one. The Chiefs game, they were right there. I mean, they were playing terrible for the first half of the year. At the back half of the year, they played teams a lot tighter. They finished 5-12, and they got better, I think. If they play like they did the back half of the year this whole season, I think the over will hit. And just looking at their schedule here, again, not a complete gauntlet. They're a tough one. I think around 6-7 wins is where I want to put them. They're a tough one because their win total is 6.5. Oh boy. Okay. Let's see here. Just run through the games in my head. Yeah, I'm gonna go over, but not. I'm gonna say around 7-ish wins is where the Panthers will finish. I wouldn't be surprised if they only win 6 games because I still think the Panthers are some pieces away. Have some close losses, but I'm gonna go over. I think they'll win around 7-ish games this year. Colts, they're at 6.5. The Colts are a sneaky one because I know, when I'm talking about shooting games, I'm like, oh, Colts, that's a free win because that's kind of just my mindset. They could be a sneaky team because even though the past 2 seasons since they hired Shane Steichen, they haven't been the best team on paper. They went 9-8 his first year, and he had Gardner Minshew most of that year, and then last year he had Richardson and Joe Flacco, and then they were just actually they went 8-9 last year, right? Yeah, they were bounced back between Richardson, Flacco the whole year. They went 8-9 last year. There we go. Okay, so yeah, they went 8-9 last year, 9 his first year. So they're at least going to hover around 500, you would think. So that automatically makes you think, all right, well, the over is going to hit. Obviously, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, that is quite the quarterback competition there. I honestly think Daniel Jones is better than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson definitely has shown much higher flashes, but I think Daniel Jones is overall the better quarterback. Now, do I think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback? I don't think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's as bad as the media and the fans, a lot of them say he is. Again, I don't think he's a great or maybe even good quarterback, but I think he actually has the potential to be a decent starting, maybe not decent, but a serviceable starting quarterback. I don't think he's going to go out there and throw for 400 yards every week, 3 touchdowns, no interception. But I think he actually is a really good scheme fit with the Colts. I think the Colts, if Daniel Jones starts the whole year, they could have a year similar how they did with Gardner Minshew starting most of the year 2 years ago in Shane Steichen's first year. Because you get, kind of a mediocre quarterback in there. Daniel Jones has legs and scrambling ability. That could really help the Colts. Now, obviously, they kind of that with Richardson. I'm just assuming Daniel Jones is going to start. Maybe Richardson will start, but I think it will be Daniel Jones. Gus, I don't think they brought Gus Bradley back. Who the hell did they hire for their DC? Somewhat obvious, I think. Oh yeah, it's William Narumo. That's right. So I think the Colts defense will be solid this year, and their offense I think will be kind of in the middle of the pack. I think the Colts will just without looking at their schedule, I definitely think the over will hit. I think they'll probably be around, an 8-9 win team, somewhere around that range. Just looking at their schedule here. Again, not they don't have a gauntlet of a schedule. But let's see. Maybe they pull off the upset week 1. Uh, they'll probably lose week 2 to them. They should beat the Titans. We'll say they split. So there are 2. Yeah, I'm gonna go over. I think they'll again be around a 7-ish win team, 7-8 win team. I could see the under because now that I'm looking at their schedule, it's a bit tougher than I thought at first glance. But I think they'll be able to get around 7-ish wins. I think I'll go with the over there. What do we get? A couple teams left here. Oh boy. Okay, we're almost there, gang. The Jaguars. Where are the Jaguars? Jaguars, there they are. Oh man, what a surprise. My team's losing the Red Sox. We won 15-1 yesterday, and we're down 2-0. Like, bruh, Jesus Christ. The mid Sox. We've been so mid the past couple seasons. Anyway, just a sip of water here. Okay. What are they at? 6.5, the Jags? Okay. The Jags could be an interesting team. Liam Cohen, hopefully Trevor Lawrence can stay healthy. Liam Cohen, I think, is a pretty good offensive coach. How is he going to be as a head coach? Who knows? Who's the Jags DC? Because Ryan Nielsen, I don't think, is returning. And okay. Okay, so they hired the Packers defensive run game coordinator and linebackers coach, which that unit was solid for the Packers last year. So I think the Jags, I think they'll have a decent year defensively. Offensively, they can stay healthy. They really don't have. Let me see the depth chart here. Obviously Travis Hunter is the big one. Is he going to play receiver and corner? I think they'll probably play him primarily at receiver. They have him listed on the corner depth chart too. I think they'll probably primarily play him at receiver. But yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. obviously a stud, but Travis Hunter's a stud. Britton's what the hell happened to what happened to Evan Ingram? I'm blanking here. What do I want to see? The Colts signed him. Is it the Colts? Probably way off. Sounds stupid. The Broncos, that's right. The Broncos, that's right. The Jags offense, I think, could be solid next season. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence can stay healthy. Let's see their schedule here, because that's kind of obviously big dependent. Let's see, they get okay, so they just need 7 wins for the over to hit. What do you think here? This is Jags are a tough one here. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning toward the over, just a bit marginally. I mean, let's just say they split with the Titans. They split with the Colts. That's 2 wins. Let's say they beat that Jets team 3. Let's say they pull off an upset against Texans 4. They'll probably pull off an upset or 2 here. It's 5. Well, actually, not really an upset. They're probably favored week 1. So let's say 5. 6. I'm gonna just go with the old. I think around 7 is the amount of wins the Jags would. I wouldn't be surprised the under it hits though at all. Raiders, without even looking at the schedule, I'm going over. I'm going to go over with the Raiders here. I think they could be a bit of a surprise team. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I don't even necessarily know if they'll finish 500 or above 500. But I think the Raiders early on are going to be a team that's tough to game plan for. You get a new scheme, Chip Kelly back in the NFL, Patrick Graham. Actually, Patrick Graham, I think, is still with them. Let me double check that, though. Um, let's see. Okay, yeah, he's still with them. I've always liked Patrick Graham. I thought he's always been a really solid DC, for the most part, at least that I can remember. So I think the defense will be solid. I think the offense is going to be unpredictable to start the year, which I'll talk about it when I talk about my team. But I'm not too confident with us playing the Raiders week one for this reason because again, new scheme, new quarterback, new head coach. It's tough to game plan for. You get a solid defense. You get Genty in the backfield. The Raiders drafted. So yeah, they're going to be a tough game plan early, and then I think as the year progresses, teams get more film. There's more of a game plan for them. I think uh, they might be struggle going into a bit of a losing streak. But I think early on they could be a team where it's like Jesus, like they might make a playoff push here. So let's say. So what they just need? Yeah, they just need to win 6 games. I think they'll win more than 6 games. I'm going to go with the over. I think they'll probably split with the Chargers. And I know I say like every division matchup is a split, but again, it's not my official predictions. I'm just going through a very bare bones prediction thing here. I think they might upset the Bears there. Should beat the Colts. There's already half their wins. Should beat the Titans. Should beat the Jags. Should split with Denver. Should beat the Giants. So yeah, I think the over will hit. I think they'll probably win around 7, 8 games, somewhere like that. I feel like at worst, Pete Carroll teams are going to be mid. Like at worst, they're going to be around a 7-win team. I think the Raiders will be around 7, 8 wins. Who knows? Maybe they even get 9. Who the hell knows? But I'm going to go with the over for the Raiders there. I'm going with the over for the Raiders there. The Saints. Oh boy. Saints. Oh, and the Saints go marching in. Where the hell are they? Oh, there they are. Okay, so 5.5. Now you just see that initially and say, well, they just need to win 6 games, the over to hit. I'm gonna go with the under here. I think again, I think at least right now the Saints are in serious contention for the first overall pick. I mean, they don't even have a quarterback. I mean, look at this. Like, no offense to this quarterback, look at the quarterback room. Obviously, Kamara's. I really like Miller too. Olave. So they actually do have a solid receiving core, but I mean, who the hell is going to throw them the ball? The line is like, oh boy. Defensively, they get a solid defense on paper, I think. Okay, now that I'm looking at it, I don't think on paper, besides quarterback, the roster is as bad as I was initially thinking. But let's just look at the schedule here. They don't play too many juggernauts. The schedule is actually fairly favorable, but the Saints, I'm not too optimistic on. Let's say they split the Falcons. I think they'll probably lose. They could beat the Titans. Let's say they lose that game. They'll win a road game. Jets probably win that. So one. I honestly think they might split with the Bucs. I think there'll be one game the Bucs just kind of Todd Bowles underprepared, and it seems like that every year. Against a team they should beat, and they just come in flat. I think they'll probably split with the Bucs, maybe one of those games. I'm gonna go under. I think the Saints will. Right now, at least, I'm thinking around 5-ish wins. So I'm gonna go under with the Saints. But again, all they need to do to hit the over is just win 6 games. That's all they need to do. So I'm gonna go under, but I just based off the schedule, 6 wins, 6+ wins is definitely doable. I think anything beyond 7 is going to be very, very difficult. But I think around 5-ish wins is where I'm at with the Saints. And Kellen Moore, not an ideal head coaching. Had they had Derek Carr, I think I would have picked the over. But obviously, quarterback's just the big question for them now. Kellen Moore, who knows what's going to happen with him as head coach? Not an ideal head coaching start, I don't think. We had 5 more teams left here to get my team left too. Okay, the Giants. The Giants. Now, they're only at 5.5. Obviously, they were, a disaster last year. If I can find them here. There they are. Their schedule is absolutely brutal. I mean, just look at this schedule. They don't have one game where it's like, at least to me, where it's like, okay, yep, well, okay, maybe that's Saints game. Except they're on the road. Who the hell knows even with that one? Besides that game, it's like, Jesus, like this schedule is absolutely brutal. Yeah, this is a tough draw for the Giants. On paper, they actually, especially defensively, that defensive line, depth chart I meant. That defensive line is going to cause some problems. It caused some problems last year. We saw in that Seattle game, it caused some serious problems. They get a really solid defense, I think. Offensively, they I think have some decent weapons. Obviously, Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy had a really solid rookie year. Slayton's always been underrated. Robinson's kind of one of my fantasy sleepers. Then the line, I feel like the Giants, it's always been like kind of a mess. But the line, they just need to stay healthy is kind of their big issue. Russell Wilson, I think, is a solid fit with Brian Daboll. Winston would be, they signed Winston before Russell Wilson, but that would be interesting. Winston, seeing him in that offense, put up a bunch of yards, turned over, a bunch get screamed at by Daboll. But Russell Wilson's more protected with the football. But this schedule was just absolutely brutal. I mean, on paper, the win total should be like around 6.5, 7.5 for the Giants, I think. But this schedule is just absolutely killer. So let's go through it real quick. Say they split with Washington. Say they split with Dallas. So that's 2. Let's say they beat the Saints 3. And then, they could beat the Raiders 4. They could pull off an upset against, Minnesota 5. They could beat Thunder 6. So the over could hit. But all they need to do is win 6 games for it to hit. And the Giants, I definitely think, are in a better position to hit the over than the Saints, even though both of them are at 5.5. I think the Giants are a better team than the Saints going into the year. It's just tough because they really should be a solid team, and they'll probably have a lot of close losses, probably have some bad blowout losses. I'm sure they'll pull off an upset or two, but they have one of the hardest schedules I have seen in a while. I saw a stat that was like they had the hardest schedule, like based off of like opponent win percentage and like year, something like that. I mean that schedule is just brutal. I kind of want to say over because I just can't see a team with looking that solid on paper, only getting 5 or less wins. But again, let's say split with Washington, split with Dallas 2. They win the Saints game 3. Then after that, maybe they beat the Niners, and then one of these teams, maybe the Raiders. I mean, I'm gonna have to go under just because the schedule is so brutal. I just feel bad for the Giants. Actually, I almost feel bad for the Giants as a Patriots fan. I should say, almost feel bad for the Giants there. If the over hits, I wouldn't be too surprised. So I could see maybe as high as 7, which is basically what this analyst here has predicted. Jets, Jets. They could be an interesting team. I think the Jets, kind of like the Raiders, could be a pain in the ass team early on in the season. New scheme, new head coach, grind it out. They could surprise people early on, but then I think they'll fade as the year goes on. Um, except they do kind of a tough schedule to start the year. That's a tough one to start the year. Oh, excuse me, I'm tired. Jesus Christ, I'm yawning. So they're at 5.5. So like the prior two teams, they just need to win 6 games and the over hits for them. Um, so yeah. Let's obviously they get Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, and then the offense is actually who did they brought in? Who did they bring in for OC? Um, who's the offense coordinator for the Jets? Okay. Uh, okay, so he was a Lions offensive staff assistant, so I guess that's good because the Lions obviously had a really good offense last year. The past 2 years, that's when he was under the Lions. Um, I mean, on paper, that is maybe not the greatest offense, but it could be solid some games, I think. Defensively, I think Aaron Glenn will have that defense. I think it'll be decent. I think there'll be a couple games where it looks like really good. There'll probably be some games where it doesn't look too great, but I think defensively, Aaron Glenn will have a decent year overall. Um, do I think the Jets will hit the over under 5.5? Let's see. Um, let's see. For the Dolphins. Beat Carolina, I'll say. Beat the Browns 3. Um, honestly, this might be a bit bold. I'm gonna say over, even though I kind of wanted the under. I think it's the safer option. I think the Jets have a couple teams that they should beat, like the Browns, Saints. Uh, what's another? The Panton, that's a tough one. Let's say they win that. The Jags should win it. I think they'll pull off maybe a couple upsets. I think the Jets could pull off a couple upsets against solid teams this year. I think the over will hit. That's my prediction. Maybe a bit bold. Under might be a bit safer. But again, they just have to win 6 games for the over to hit. So yeah, I'm gonna go over. I think around 6, 7 wins the Jets this season. That's my prediction for them. All right, 3 more teams left here. Titans, Tennessee Titans. What are they at? 5.5. Well, wow, the Browns have a lower win loss than the Saints. That's or win total than the Saints. That's a bit surprising. Win projection, whatever the hell you want to phrase it as. Okay, Titans. So obviously they got Cam Ward. He's going to be the guy. I mean, they said Will Levis is going to compete for it, but obviously Cam Ward is the first pick. You're going to have to imagine is going to start. They get some decent weapons offensively. Brian Callahan, I don't think he's a great, obviously you have 1 year to base off, but I don't think he's a great head coach. But I mean, we saw some sparks in this Titans offense last year. Last season, especially against that Texans game, they pulled off the upset in Houston. They looked really good. The offense, I think, will have a couple games where it looks surprising. I think it'll probably be, have a similar output to how it did last year. Cam Ward, I think, will have a solid rookie year. Probably have some bad moments and good moments. I think overall will have a solid year. Titans defense was solid last year. But then as the year progressed, it kind of, wasn't as great. But it's still a solid defense, I think. At one point, I think they had like the second or third ranked overall defense, which is surprising. So do you think the over or under will hit for the Titans here? Let's see. Again, they just need 6 wins. That is a tough draw. Week 1 at Denver for Cam Ward. That is a tough draw. they split with the Colts, split with the Texans, maybe. Pull off an upset one of these two games. Let's say they win, so it's three. Um, say they split the Jags 4, 5. I think 5-12 around there. Again, just 6 wins is all they need for the over to hit, but I think around 5 wins is where the Titans will get. They'll probably pull off an upset against a good team, maybe an upset or two. But I think around 5-12 is where the Titans will sit. So I guess I'll go under for them, but not too confident with that one. Okay, two more here. Browns, and I'm going to loop back to my team, the Patriots. Browns, they're only at 4.5, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the lowest out of everyone here. I'm honestly a bit surprised there. I mean, obviously, quarterback is just, no, I mean, they don't even have Shador listed on the depth chart here. Obviously, Deshaun Watson's out for the year. No one knows who they traded for Pickett. They took Gabriel before Sanders, and they picked Sanders, and they have Flacco. Right now they are a mess. They're a mess in a lot of ways, but a mess at quarterback specifically. Um, you know, saying anyone can start. They're saying Shador looks good, Joe Flacco looks good. If I had to guess, I honestly think Joe Flacco is going to start the year, and then Shador will come in not too far after. I mean, they got Deontay Johnson. That's a solid pickup, I think. Jerry Jeudy obviously was solid for them last. Tillman's decent. Njoku, I like him. The line was obviously a disaster last year. They just got to stay healthy. Defensively, under why the hell am I blanking on his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Eagles coordinator, Super Bowl 52. Why the hell am I blanking on his name? Oh my God, why am I? Jim Schwartz. Jesus Christ. I don't know why I'm blanking on. I just blanked on his name so much. They were really solid his first year, the top defenses in the league. Last year, they took a bit of a regression. They had a bunch of injuries. Obviously, JOK, as they call him, had that bad IR injury. He's going to be out, I think, the whole year, if I'm not mistaken, again, unfortunately. But they had a bunch of injuries. They were still, I think, a solid defense overall for most of the year, though, considering everything that was going on. I think they could have a decent year defensively. Again, they'll be a solid defense. Offensively, I think the Browns' offense will be how it's looked the past couple years. Jerome Ford, I think, is decent, but I don't think he should be a starting running back. Although he definitely has his bright spots there. I mean, on paper, this is a decent team. Honestly, all they have to do was win 5 games to the overhit. I think most people are predicting them to be terrible. I don't think they'll be great. I thought they were going to be a really solid team last year. I think I had them at 12-5, so I was just a bit off on that prediction last year. Which, to be fair, they won 11 games with a musical chairs of quarterbacks the year prior. I thought, Deshaun Watson would be decent enough last year, where even if he was just a game manager, they could be a solid team with how good the defense was expected to be. But obviously, that did not turn out as I expected. I knew that was a bit bold. Now I look like a freaking idiot for picking them to win 12 games last season. But anyway, I mean, all they need to do is win 5 games. I mean, you look at the schedule here. Not the toughest, not the easiest though. I mean, it feels like the Bengals, they at least split with them, even though the Bengals swept them last year, if I'm remembering right. Okay, let's see. Do I see 5 wins? Okay, actually, this is kind of a tough schedule here. I mean, I think they'll definitely pull off an upset. Like they upset the Ravens. I think they'll probably pull off a similar upset. Maybe they spoiled the Ravens. Maybe they have an upset over the Bills, something like that. The Titans, they probably should win that one. Raiders, that'll be interesting. I mean, on paper, this is a decent team, but now looking at the schedule, okay, it's a bit harder than I thought at first. I mean, all they need to do is win 5 games for the over to hit. Oh boy, this is a tough one. They just need 5 wins. Okay. I guess I'm gonna go under, but I'm not confident in that at all. I mean, this is a tough. I mean, they realistically could start out one, two. They could lose three, four, five. I mean, they really could start off with a rough record. That is a tough draw to start the season. I think, honestly, I think around four-ish games is where the Browns will win. Even though on paper they're a solid team, this is just a tough schedule that I'm looking at it. Yeah, that's tough for the Browns. Would not all be surprised at the overhits. I'm sure they'll pull off an upset or two, beat a solid team next season, good team next season. So I'm going to go under, but would not at all be surprised at the overhit. Okay, now going up to my team here. Here we go. Let me find us here. Here we are. We are at 7.5. I am going over all the way on this. And yes, I'm a Patriots fan. Maybe it's a bit biased. However, I am so optimistic on this next season for us, this upcoming season for us. I mean, Vrabel, I wanted him when we let Belichick go. We got Mayo. Then we got Vrabel the year after. I think we realized he was the right guy from the get-go. We corrected for that mistake. No offense to Mayo. We got Josh McDaniels back. Obviously, Drake, he was has his struggles, to say the least, as a head coach, but he's a really good OC. Mac Jones, it's like a Rookie of the Year candidate, had a career year by far with Josh McDaniels and Drake May. I think definitely is better than Mac Jones and what we saw from last season, with a less supporting cast than Mac Jones had his rookie year too. Defensively, we're really solid. I mean, I'm very optimistic. Just looking at the depth chart here, sure, there's areas, actually, there's probably multiple areas you can point and go, okay, yeah, they can definitely get better there. But unlike the past couple seasons, I guess specifically last year, there really isn't an area where it's like, Jesus, like that needs to be addressed immediately. They're not going to be winning much with that hole in the roster. I mean, defensively, we are low-key stacked. We are like low-key stacked defensively. Even last season, we had some good games defensively, and we were like a solid defense for, a couple games, especially at the start of the year. And then, there were a couple really bad defensive games we had. Offensively, we had some bright spots last year. There were a couple bad offensive games from us. We had some bright spots last year. Drake May had some bright spots. We had one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history last year. We certainly addressed that a bit. And again, this line isn't like this is going to be the greatest line in the history of the league. I'm sure it'll have some struggles. It's not going to be one of the best lines in the league, but compared to what we had last year, that is certainly a significant upgrade. Henderson, he kind of looks like the James White role he could fill. What the hell is that? My neighbors above me are just, that was a weird ass noise. It must be doing something with the tub or something. That was a weird ass noise. Diggs, obviously the big free agent signing. I mean, I feel like this roster is better than any of the Titans rosters Mike Vrabel had. And we saw the Titans rosters. I mean, one year he went to the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill. Or as I call him, Ryan Midahill, even though he was actually pretty solid with the Titans when he was their starter there. Even with the Dolphins, he was solid through parts of his career there too in Miami. But this defense is stacked. We got Terrell Williams, who was the Lions' defensive line coach. The Lions' defensive line was solid even after Hudson and all the injuries they had last year. So I'm hyped for that. Titan connection there with Vrabel. I'm just really excited for the defense. I think we got a really good defense. Offensively, I think we'll be good with Josh McDaniels. And then, again, just looking at the schedule, we're favored by Vegas in 11 games next season, which is insane. We have a very favorable schedule. Now, as I was talking about the Raiders, I'm kind of concerned week one because I think the Raiders will be a pain in the ass team, especially early on. New scheme, new coach. At worst, a mediocre team being coached by Pete Carroll as the head coach at the helm there. So I think that could be we get Genti week one. I think that week one, I'm going to probably pick us to win, but I'm a bit nervous for that game. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. just feel like any team Pete Carroll's the head coach of is at worst mediocre, and it feels like they always get off to a good start, especially just new scheme. You don't know what you're preparing for. And then at Miami, we always struggle at Miami, obviously, so that's not a great draw for us. Pittsburgh, that's tough. The Panthers, I think we will beat Pittsburgh at home, though that'll probably be a very low scoring, grinded out game. Panthers, we should beat. The Bills, I mean, we technically split with them last year. They would have beaten us, I think, if they played their starters. But even when we played our starters in Buffalo, we still nearly beat them. And Vrabel, it seems like he has a tendency to play the Bills well as head coach. In 2020, he knocked them off. And in 2021, he knocked them off. So I'm going to be optimistic that we split with the Bills. Absolutely should beat the Saints, should beat the Titans, should beat the Browns. So what's that? 1, 2, 3. I'll say we lose at Buffalo. We beat them in Buffalo. We split. So let's see. One, I guess we'll give us a loss at Miami. We'll probably lose one of these two games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should beat the Falcons. 7, probably lose this game to the Bucs. 8 should beat the Jets. Should beat the Giants. 9, 10. And I'll give us a win against the Dolphins. So honestly, 11. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. I think around 11 wins is extremely doable for us next season. I am so optimistic. And some teams like 11 wins. They go like, okay, and that was us when we were like the dynasty years. Like I remember we went 11-5 in 2018. It was like, oh boy, 11-5. We're not looking too great going into postseason. That was year the Chiefs went 12-4, the juggernaut. And we ended up going into Arrowhead and beating them in the AFC Championship game, one of the greatest games I've ever watched. But 11-5 compared to what we've had these past couple seasons is going to be like friggin' a miracle, for Christ's sake. How god awful we've been the past couple seasons, specifically the last 2 years. At least we were mid. Since Brady left, we were mid, and we had 7-9 in 2020. Obviously, we had a good year in 21. 22, we were mid. We went 8-9. In the past 2 years, we were just bad, just a fucking terrible football team for the most part. But I'm very optimistic, so I'm absolutely going over with on my team here. I'll probably make it like in-depth, Patriots season preview video coming soon. That's definitely an idea I've been floating around. But yeah, I feel like I did over for, I don't know, probably like 80% of the teams, something like that. If I just shotgun my guess there. But yeah, that'll, I think, do it for this video. Oh, nice, the Red Sox side. I'll probably throw that game on in a minute here. But that'll probably do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Good to be back talking with the NFL. So pumped for the season. Not too far off from the preseason. We get about like a month and a half-ish. Middle August, I think, is when the preseason starts up. So that'll be entertaining. Training camp and stuff. I try to at least go out to one Patriots training camp every year. So it's a good environment there. That's always a fun time. But anyway, that'll wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed. And yeah, thanks guys. Take it easy.